Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.
Today, we're trying to make sense of, well, a flood of information. We're talking about the public release of more than 20,000 pages of documents, emails, texts, legal filings, all tied to Jeffrey Epstein.
It's a massive amount of data to get through.
It is, and our mission here is really to be your filter. We want to distill the most important and often, very politically charged pieces of information. We're going to look at two big things. First, the frantic effort by Epstein and his associates to manage his image, and second, the nuts and bolts, the day-to-day reality of his legal troubles after his conviction.
Right, and the scope of these documents is what's so interesting. They really focus on his final years, just before his death in 2019. And you see this paradox. Here's a guy with global influence, but at the same time, he's bogged down in arguments over the rules of his Florida probation.
Okay, so let's start there with that inner circle. Who was Epstein actually turning to when he was trying to salvage his reputation? The emails point to some very big names: Michael Wolff, Steve Bannon, the attorney Catherine Remler.
And the intent behind these communications is pretty clear when you read them. He's either seeking advice or, acting as a sounding board. He's constantly trying to rehabilitate this shattered reputation. And that even included a planned documentary with Steve Bannon.
The Bannon documentary. Such a strange piece of this puzzle. So the sources say Bannon actually filmed hours of interviews with Epstein. He was planning a whole project about the, quote, real story.
Yeah, and in a text from 2018, Bannon himself described the potential film as a hagiography.
A hagiography. So basically a glowing biography.
Exactly. I mean, it's a pretty cynical word to use for a project about a convicted sex offender. It suggests a very deliberate attempt at whitewashing history. And what's really chilling is that the very last texts between them were on July 6, 2019.
The day he was arrested for the final time.
The very same day. They were talking about filming on the island.
Wow. And then there's Michael Wolff, the author. His involvement is also very telling.
Wolff, famous for his books on the Trump White House. The emails show he knew Epstein for years, even used him as a source. And in one email from December 2015, Wolff is actively giving Epstein PR advice.
Right. He tells him to use his old connection with Trump for PR and political currency. He specifically suggested letting Trump, who was then a candidate, hang himself in a CNN interview about their relationship.
It's pure strategy. And then you have Catherine Remler,
the former White House counsel who later became a top executive at Goldman Sachs.
Exactly. Her involvement just shows the level of, the professional world Epstein still had access to. In 2019, Epstein brings up a Remler proposal. It's for an article. And the whole point was to reframe his 2008 plea deal.
Not as a sweetheart deal.
No, not at all. The pitch was to frame it as a deal he took because he was facing an overly aggressive federal investigation for what were, in essence, local offenses. It was all about controlling the narrative.
So, moving from the PR team, let's talk about the big names themselves. What did these private messages say about how Epstein viewed Donald Trump? Especially since their public statements about each other were so contradictory.
Well, this is where the documents get really explosive, and it's the material that was heavily cited by Democratic politicians. There's a January 2019 email from Epstein to Michael Wolff, and regarding Trump, he just flat out says, of course he knew about the girls, as he asked Ghislaine to stop.
A direct claim of knowledge.
A very direct claim.
And that wasn't the only time Trump came up in that context, was it?
Not at all. There's another email from 2011, this one from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. He points out what he calls that dog that hasn't barked.
And that dog is Trump.
Yes. He was alleging that Trump had spent hours with a victim who was later identified as Virginia Giuffre, but had just stayed completely silent about it.
But it's also clear that whatever relationship they had, it had completely soured by 2017.
Oh, completely. His personal feelings for Trump come through loud and clear in these new quotes. He wrote, I have met some very bad people, none as bad as Trump. Not one decent cell in his body.
He also called him a maniac.
A maniac, and he said he was showing signs of early dementia. Beyond the insults, though, Epstein clearly felt he had the inside track on Trump's business life. He forwarded an email to Wolff saying, Donald doesn't really own very much. He rents out his name.
And he wrote to Remler, you see, I know how dirty Donald is. He was connecting that idea to why someone like Trump would need a fixer.
Okay, so let's shift gears to another major figure, Prince Andrew. The emails here really seem to challenge his public timeline of events.
They do. So his official story was that he cut all contact with Epstein in November of 2010. But these documents, They show a pretty clear chronological problem with that.
There's an email from Prince Andrew to both Epstein and Maxwell dated March 2011,
4 months after he supposedly cut ties.
4 months later. In it, he says, "I can't take any more of this," which was his reaction to the media storm he was caught in at the time. And then there's the Virginia Jew for evidence. An email from Epstein in 2011 seems to corroborate the existence of that now famous photograph.
Right, the one Andrew later implied might have been faked.
Yes. Epstein writes that Jeffrey had her photo taken with Andrew, as many of my employees have. He confirms the photo exists.
It's so easy to get lost in these, huge political names and the crazy quotes. But the other half of these 20,000 pages shows us something totally different. The very boring, granular details of his life after his conviction. The contrast it's just jarring.
That's the real tension in all of this. I mean, on one hand, he has a former White House counsel pitching articles for him. On the other hand, he's arguing with his probation officer about his approved walking routes. The legal filings show his lawyers were constantly trying to modify his probation status.
He was under something called community control, which sounds like a kind of house arrest.
It's highly restrictive, yes, and they were fighting to get it terminated early so he could travel to New York for business.
We've got emails from his lawyer, Jack Goldberger, going back and forth with the state attorney's office in 2010 about it. And the state basically said, look, we'll consider it if you follow the rules.
But the documents show that compliance was a real issue. There's a Palm Beach police memo from August 2009. It details a clear violation. Epstein was seen walking northbound on South Ocean Boulevard, which was outside his approved route.
And an officer actually stopped him.
Stopped him on the street. He claimed he was just turning around to go home, but the officer warned him, you could be arrested for this.
And travel was a huge point of contention. The flight logs from 2009 confirm he was flying a lot. Helicopter, Cessna, between Palm Beach and Miami. These flights were linked to a company called Air Lane Inc., and they even list Nadia Markova as a passenger on some of them.
And even just trying to monitor him was a challenge for law enforcement. Investigators in 2009 were trying to get security footage and sign-in sheets for his business address. But the investigators' notes say the camera angle was bad, and more importantly, Epstein's name never appeared on the visitor log after 7 p.m.
So before we wrap up the legal side, we should probably look backward for a minute. The files also included his original defense strategy from 2006. And that really gives you the context for how he got that infamous plea deal in the first place.
Exactly. It's a defense memo titled impeachment material, which is just a legal term for their plan to discredit the witnesses and pick apart the police case. They argued that the Palm Beach Police Department left out exculpatory evidence, that the facts were incomplete, basically, that the whole investigation was botched.
And they went after the accusers hard.
Very hard. The defense challenged polygraph results, the quality of surveillance video, but mostly they attacked the credibility of the key witnesses. They brought up things like, one witness allegedly stole from an employer, another lied about getting fired, used drugs, anything to create doubt.
Right. And with one accuser, the defense just said Epstein denied any sexual contact and pointed out that she was already 18. And the documents show the state attorney's office at the time concluded she was, quote, not credible nor a proper complainant.
So it confirms that from the very beginning, the legal fight was this aggressive, multi-front war focused entirely on undermining the victims.
When you step back and look at all 20,000 pages, you just see this incredibly complex web that Epstein built. It wasn't just about the crimes themselves. It was about constantly managing the fallout, trying to exert influence even after he was convicted. You have this high-level reputation management happening on one side, and then this gritty day-to-day struggle to avoid being arrested for taking a walk. It's an incredible contrast.
I think that's the real significance. It's seeing how all these powerful people are connected and how obsessed they all are with media image and political fallout. It just underscores the enormous, multifaceted effort it takes to maintain that kind of secrecy and influence when you're under legal scrutiny. It involves everyone, politicians, lawyers, journalists.
So here's a final thought for you to consider. When a huge scandal like this breaks and all these documents come out, our attention, naturally, it goes straight to the big names, the explosive quotes.
Yeah.
But think about all those tedious legal filings we talked about, the notes on walking routes, the subpoenaed flight logs. What is that constant tension between the mundane, the compliance paperwork, and the monumental, the global influence? What does that tell you about how power actually works? It's a really stark reminder that sometimes the biggest, highest-stakes battles are actually fought and won in the margins over the tiniest details.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.